Thank you so much, Dennis. Thank you so much for having me here to share this wonderful event today with all the speakers before and after. It's been absolutely amazing, and I appreciate each and every single one of you so much. I'm super thrilled to be here today for what I really hope will be a meaningful connection. And I want you all to know from the start that we're about to experience something. And it's not just me speaking to you, but it's also about what we can discover together. I'm here to share a story, but I invite you to listen not just with your ears, but with your emotions or with your heart, because that's where real transformation happens. We're often conditioned to think that conversations are just exchanges of information, but they can be so much more. They can also be a meeting of the minds and of our emotions, a way for us to reshape and transform what we know. So, I want to begin by taking you all back to a moment in time for my own life that completely altered my understanding of intuition, energy, and the power of emotional transformation. So I was 40 years old. I was very sick. In fact, I was at the point that I was so sick that I needed a wheelchair to get around. And the day that that happened, we left the doctor's office, my spouse and we went and we got that wheelchair. And it was crammed and fought to be put in the little two-seater car that we had. So, as you can imagine, this was a big life change and transformation. When we left and started driving home, right, something very strange happened. Instead of driving home, my spouse turned the car around in the opposite direction. And my intuition immediately flared that sinking feeling, and it settled deep into the pit of my stomach. Do you know that feeling? The one where your whole body seems to be on high alert and the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and your pulse quickens and your face flushes with heat? That was me. And I knew deep down in my gut that something was very wrong. And as we drove further and further away, without a word being spoken, I realized that we were heading to my son's house that was 2 hours away. And in that moment, there was a realization in my body, feelings of betrayal and abandonment and fear. And it washed over me like a wave. And my whole body felt heavy and weighed down by the magnitude of what was happening. And I want to pause here and I want to ask you all, to reflect and invite you. Have you ever had that moment where your intuition knew something before your brain could process it? Or when you felt something so strongly in your body that it took a while for your mind to catch up? Has anyone ever experienced that? You can take that as rhetorical, or you can comment in the comments if you like. What I want you to think about is the sensation. Was your heart racing? Did your hands go cold? Did you feel that gut instinct pulling you in a certain direction or in the way of a certain decision? But that's your body speaking a language all of its own. And for me, in that car ride was one of those moments. But here is where it gets interesting. All of those feelings of fear and betrayal, as they started to rise, I knew that I had a choice. I had been practicing finding a space between stimulus and response, inspired by Viktor Frankl, the renowned psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, that says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And our response lies our growth and our freedom. And this was the moment that I could let my feelings and my beliefs that came with them consume me, or I could take control of my energy. I could shift my emotional state. And I want to share with you all exactly how I did that. It's the same process that we'll experience together in just a few moments. Because in that car, I tapped into the principles of energy shifting and emotional frequency tuning. And I want you to know that it is possible to change your emotional vibration and your executive function, even in the hardest of moments. Because I initially learned how to do this in an even more traumatic event that happened in my life 13 years earlier, in a life and death fight for my life, when I was kidnapped and held hostage for 72 hours. So what I know is that I've survived two very intense situations and also very not so intense situations where my fight, flight, or freeze response was set off. And I was able to shift my energy, keep my executive function, be able to still make decisions, be able to still be present without disassociating, right? And such. So now I really want to invite you all to do this with me in an actual doing. I want us to experience what it feels like to shift that emotional frequency. So I invite you, if you would like, to please join me. And I want you to start with something that you're familiar with, that we're all familiar with. And just for a moment, I want you to feel that feeling of sadness or heaviness. I want to invite you even to close your eyes and take a deep breath with me. And as you exhale, I want you to think about a time when you felt that heaviness in the past. Maybe it was loss, maybe it was betrayal or fear, but I want you to feel that for just a moment. And I want you to notice how your body reacts. Where are you holding the tension? Perhaps it's in your jaw or in your shoulders, your legs, or your little toe. It could be anywhere in your body. And I invite you to take a deep breath in again. And as you do that, I want you to focus on this idea of lightness. I want you to imagine that the air that you are inhaling is filled with brightness and warmth and love. And I want you to lean into another time, a time that you felt great gratitude. So much gratitude, you felt as if your heart might burst into a billion pieces, like a supernova. Maybe someone fed you when you were hungry. Maybe someone opened up their house for you when you needed shelter. Maybe this gratitude comes when you have done the same for others. But I want you to feel that gratitude cycling through your body as you breathe, as you inhale and exhale. And I want you to feel it wrapping around that heaviness, like a hug, right, in the form of a blanket. And this blanket of energy is at your very core. And it is filled with compassion, empathy, courage, curiosity, acceptance. And it was created for this sadness, this confusion, this doubt, and this fear. And through your breath, I want you to feel these energies becoming one. David Hawkins' scale of consciousness shows us the frequency, the energy, the understanding of feelings and where they lie on a scale. And I encourage you in this moment to lean into that the sadness can not exist without compassion, and compassion cannot exist without sadness. That there is not necessarily a good or bad feeling innately, but there are dense energies that are harder for us to process. But in the totality of our human experience, there cannot be one without the other. And in a sense of wholeness and oneness, compassion is shame, and it is guilt, and it is joy, and it is love, and it is the encompassment and the totality. When we feel inside of our body, and when we can direct what we feel, we can shift the energy. This is the space of choice. So, how do you feel now? And did you feel a shift? And did the energy in the room change? Can you and did you reshape your emotional experience just now in real time? What I want you to walk away with today is that conversations, emotions, and even our intuition are not static. They are exchanges of information. They're dynamic and they're always evolving, transforming, and becoming. And just as this room, I believe, feels differently now, so can any conversation that you enter into. The power of what I've shared today doesn't just lie in my words, it lies in what we've all just experienced together. And this is the magic of real conversation. They don't just rearrange the pieces of our lives, they create entirely new ones. And if we can go out into the world and if we can enter into every interaction that we have from this space, how different would our lives be? How much more could we see where we can insert compassion or empathy or sit with shame and guilt without judgment.